All right. I think we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn on my camera. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast. We're really glad to have you here with us. Want to do a quick introduction. Also, a few little housekeeping items we want to let you know about. So we'll go ahead and I'll start with introductions. My name is Brian McMurdo. I'm a project manager with Datamark. Also, I've been in the public safety industry for 23 years now. And I started off in the dispatch center. So at the 911 center, taking calls, 911 calls, dispatching police and fire, and did that for a little over 20 years, and joined the Datamark team. So excited to be here with you today, excited to be talking about this topic, and very excited to have a great friend and co-worker presenting today as well, and that's Becca. So Becca, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Brian. I'm Becca Mangian. I'm a GIS technical manager here with Datamark. My background is in GIS. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now, 3 of those years with Datamark. I'm really humbled, just echoing what Brian said, I'm really humbled to be able to discuss burnout with y'all today. I really hope the information we share can have a positive impact, and I know this topic naturally brings out a level of vulnerability with us, but I personally believe there's a lot of power in vulnerability. So if y'all are ready, we're ready. So happy to have you guys here and happy to be here.
Yeah. A couple just housekeeping things. We will have a little bit of time at the very end for questions if you have them. We do have a chat feature. Feel free to throw those, anything, questions or any other comments in there in the chat. We'll try to check that periodically throughout. And then also, this is being recorded, and since you have registered, we will provide you a link to the recording probably in a day or so. So be looking for that. Again, we're really glad you're here talking about this topic, burnout, that impacts millions of people, not only here in the U.S., but all over the world, especially these last 2 years. So I want to say, if you're exhausted, if you're mentally and physically drained, you're in the right place today. If you're not quite there, but you're heading down that path, you're in the right place. So let's go ahead and jump in from burnout to breakthrough. As we start up, I want to kind of give you an idea of where we're going, give you what we call our burnout roadmap. And just going to highlight some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Of course, we're going to define what burnout is and its components. We will talk about the symptoms. It's important to know the symptoms, the cause, and that'll help you combat burnout. Also going to talk about where burnout comes from and why that matters. And this is where, Becca mentioned being vulnerable. This is where we're going to share some of our personal experiences with burnout, both in our personal and professional life. And then we'll talk about what we got to do to break through it, what we got to do to break through the burnout.
All right, so what is burnout? I believe the more you understand something, the more you're able to recognize its presence in any given scenario. So by defining burnout and almost giving it a face, if you will, if it starts showing up in your life, you'll be able to recognize it more easily. And as we go through this presentation, I hope that burnout starts to become more recognizable to you and in your life, which in turn will become a tool for you in the future if you ever need to break through it. So burnout can be defined as a state of emotional and physical exhaustion that's brought on by long periods of constant, unrelenting stress. And whenever I read that, I always have to take a moment and really process it because, I mean, the words alone exhaust me. It's the way that they kind of all play together there. And I guess I personally define burnout as having a total imbalance in areas of your life that can be brought on by pouring too much of yourself into one or a few areas and then neglecting to refill from other areas of yourself. That's kind of how I view burnout. So there's 3 components of burnout that we have listed here. They all sort of complement each other when you're feeling burnt out. So they play off of one another. Emotional exhaustion impacts you completely. It not only causes you to feel depleted emotionally, but it can start to impact you physically when left unattended too. And that can play into the second component here, depersonalization and cynicism. So, you know, you pull away, you start to detach, you get comfortable with the burnout feeling because you might not be prioritizing nurturing areas of yourself that would provide balance. It becomes harder and harder to pull yourself out of that mental state. And this can start to impact your personal relationships, but even more importantly, your relationship with yourself. So that can lead to the third component here, which is that feeling of ineffectiveness. You might start to question your capabilities or your self-worth. You start to doubt yourself, and it can really lead into a downward spiral. You know, everything that I just talked about, it really does summarize burnout in a nutshell. We're going to talk here shortly about more of the specific symptoms that you might feel as burnout is developing. But overall, these are the components of that, you know, really define burnout. And the last thing that I'll point out here is that burnout does not discriminate. You know, it can impact anyone in any area of life. It can also look different for everyone. So it's not that one size fits all. And as you hear us talking about burnout, you might be thinking, I've never experienced some of this, or, you know, some of this doesn't really relate to me. Just know that burnout impacts everyone differently, and it might look a little different for you. And Brian and I know we're going to be sharing our stories later. My burnout story might resonate with some of you, but maybe not all of you. And, you know, same for Brian's story. So I just want to leave with knowing that burnout impacts everyone differently, but it does not discriminate.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Becca. I'd like to add a little bit to that too. I mean, it doesn't discriminate. And I mean, that can go from, you know, the frontline brand new employee all the way up to the CEO or the director. So it can impact everybody. And like you said, it can impact everybody differently. There was something else you said in there, like, you know, just that emotional state, that place that you're in. You know, it can get dark, and like, you know, you start to just live with it. You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that can be challenging too, or as you know, get deeper into burnout, that light in the end of the tunnel seems very dim. So let's go on to the symptoms. You know, I think one of the powerful things with the symptoms is we can recognize that we're having these sometimes, but we don't always necessarily associate that to the burnout or the early stages or causes of burnout. So, you know, we continue to push ourselves and go forward. But I think really by understanding the symptoms and the causes, you really are able to prevent or even recover or break through the burnout. So some of the symptoms we have here, and then we also have the 12 stages of burnout. And if you're like me, my eyes are automatically drawn to pictures, and that's what I'm looking at right now. But feel free to read through those and kind of maybe even feel out or decide where you're at in that, if you're even on there. But some of the symptoms of burnout: headaches, sleeplessness, increased irritability and impatience with coworkers, family, friends. You'll often notice a sense of or a lack of motivation, just being very lethargic. hard time focusing. And also, you can be anxious, have anxiety. One of the other items is um, kind of that reclusive behavior. You kind of start to shut yourself in. Um, you want to disconnect from people, and then another thing, to cope and deal with how you're feeling. Um, Sometimes food and drugs, alcohol could be what you're using to get through that personal or work related stress. Um, so again, I think knowing some of these symptoms and the causes can help you prevent going deeper into burnout. I don't know if you had anything you want to add there, Becca.
No, I was just looking at the 12 stages here, and I think at any given point of my burnout journey, or the few times I've felt real intense burnout, I've had a component of all this. So, yeah, I think just reiterating that the symptoms might look different for everybody, and the way that burnout shows up in your life might be different than the way it would show up for one of us. But just the importance of really understanding yourself, and when you start seeing some of these symptoms show up, try to address them early on.
Yeah.
So we've defined burnout. We've talked about the symptoms, that some of the common symptoms to recognize it showing up in your life. And we really want to gauge where y'all are at. So we want to have a quick poll of you guys. This is anonymous, but we want to know where on this burnout scale are you feeling? A being that and this is really kind of related to work, but also applying to your personal life too. But I enjoy my work. I have no symptoms of burnout. It's A. You're under stress. You don't always have as much energy as you did, but you don't really feel that burned out. You're definitely burning out and have one or more of the symptoms that you can recognize. And then the symptoms of burnout that you're experiencing, they won't go away. And you think about work a lot. You're kind of diving into work. And then the last one here, which is E, is that you're just completely burned out. You're at the point where you should probably, you might need to seek help and start vocalizing that. So poll's going to pop up here. Answer honestly. I want to know where you're at today and where you're really feeling, so we can kind of gauge where y'all are at.
Yeah, and again, this is anonymous. Nobody's gonna know what you put. And we definitely don't track of the letter that you pick. So completely anonymous.
Wow. I'm watching these, so I know you guys probably can't see. I'll take a screenshot of this after, but it's like a bell curve, but actually most of the answers are C and D. It's a little skewed to more of the burnout side. All right, I'm gonna screenshot this at this point. Y'all can see. Oh.
Yeah, I don't.
Paste in there.
I was gonna say I might have to do that.
Okay. I was gonna put it in the chat, but
there you go.
Yeah, it is a bell curve.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't think you put screenshots, but the majority of them, of the answers, are C and D. Actually, vast majority. The rest kind of getting mainly like under 10 votes each. So
yeah, and I think
thank you for participating in that.
Definitely appreciate that, your participation, and I think too. Those who hit that letter E, I feel completely burnt out. I'm at a point where I may need to seek help. As we go through this, you'll hear our stories, and I'll share a little bit about mine. But the one thing I think both Beck and I really want to make sure that people understand through this is asking for help is not a sign of weakness at all. And even as you're, if you're looking at C and D and thinking, yeah, I'm definitely heading down that path of burnout, reaching out for help. As we talk about breaking through the burnout and giving you some tools there, we'll talk more about that. But again, I think one of the big things I just want to say, especially to those of you who selected E, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. If anything, it's a major sign of strength.
Yeah, I was going to say the fact that you can even recognize in yourself that you're feeling that is already admirable, and it's a strength that you know yourself and you can acknowledge your feelings. And really, throughout this presentation, we want to drive home that this is a community. You're not alone, because I know my experience with burnout is it was very isolating feeling, and I felt like I was never going to get out of this and nobody can help me. But that's just not true. There's a lot of people out there who can help, and even if it's just taking small baby steps for yourself to pull out of that, it might be a long journey, but don't lose hope, because there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to also show some statistics. Found a couple studies that were done, and wanted to share a little bit. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I thought this was really interesting, and especially as we look at the pandemic, how that impacted things, burnout, stress, and stuff like that. Thought it would be good to share some of this stuff. So Indeed, the giant aggregator job site, job aggregator site, they conducted this survey, and this one was with U.S. workers, to determine the level of burnout exhibited by different groups of people. And so, as you can see there, the findings, so this is compared from 2020 to 2021 against the pre-pandemic study that they did in 2020. And you can see the differences there. So Gen Z went up from 47 to 58%, millennials 53 to 59, Gen Z 40 to 54%, and then baby boomers 24 to 31%. Another thing with this study, some of the highlights that you can pull from this, was that really over half, 52% of those surveyed experienced burnout in 2021. And that was up from 43% who said they had the same, 43% from the pre-COVID study. And again, among all those who responded, 80% believe COVID-19 has impacted the workplace burnout. 67% say that burnout has worsened during the pandemic. Another little thing I wanted to share here was the Gallup. They did a State of the Global Workplace report, 2022 Global Workplace report. And one of the things that was in there I thought was really interesting was that that employees are feeling even more stressed than they did in 2020. And as you can see there, and whether that stress is because of work or the stress is carrying over into work, one thing's clear, that the employees are feeling more stressed than they did in 2020. Another study that was done, and you can look this one up, but at Microsoft, they surveyed 20,000 people worldwide, and from that, they found that 53% of managers expressed that they were burnout, and 48% reported of the employees, frontline employees, reported being burnout. So again, a little bit of statistics there. Thought those were very interesting, but it is showing that that upward tick in burnout. It's not declining or anything, but it's it's getting we're seeing an increase even from the pandemic. When you would think maybe because the pandemic is kind of lessening, or we're post pandemic, that we would see those numbers go down, but that's just not the case.
Okay, it's story time. As we go into our stories, we're sharing them in hopes that there's parts of it that might resonate with you. And I guess I'm just putting my vulnerability out there, that it's always a little nerve-wracking. So bear with us as we kind of share our stories. Okay, so I'm going to share my burnout story, where I was mentally about a year ago. And I'm going to walk through the events and the timeline for how my burnout developed and then eventually fully consumed me. So I'm going to start in 2019. I was living in Southern California. It's where I was born and raised, and there's a lot of familiarity and people there that I'm really close to. I was at this pivotal time in my life where my focus was really on my personal growth and understanding myself and focusing on building my personal relationships. I was becoming more established in my career and setting goals for myself that I was really, I was achieving. I was surrounded by really driven and inspiring people that made me want to be better. I was training for a half marathon for the first time, and I was really focused on just all aspects of my health. And I truly felt like I was in the best space mentally and physically that I've ever been in. And, looking back, it's not something you necessarily acknowledge in the moment, just how fulfilled I was, I guess. But I'll say that it's really empowering feeling. It's an empowering feeling when you can recognize what's within your power to control and what you're capable of. So I tell you this because I feel it's really important to explain the place that I was in before my burnout started to develop. So that was the mental space I was in. Now let's fast forward to the end of February 2020. COVID hits, and like many others, my work environment changed. I was now working from home, taken out of a really cool office environment, really driven individuals, collaborative space, and working from home, which at the time it wasn't too much of a shakeup, right? Because things seemed to be short-sighted, was the understanding, right? So then a month later, I got a call from my parents delivering some pretty life-altering family health news, completely unexpected, and the kind of news that makes you really take a step back and reflect on your priorities and what is really meaningful in life for you. And so from there, after a lot of thought, I made the decision to leave California and move to Dallas to be closer to my family, which is where I'm currently at. And as I adjust and I settle into my new location, I start to really feel the impacts of the changes happening in my life. I don't blame the pandemic for my burnout, but it was definitely a contributing factor. I'm in a new location, no social outlets. And I want to say that I absolutely love my family, and they are my support here. But it was just a complete 180 from the environment I had previously. So I'm working from home. I'm in a location that's unfamiliar during a pandemic, which I know so many people were also dealing with. And while I'm working through these adjustments in my personal life, my work responsibilities start to really pick up. I was investing a lot of my time in work because that was the one consistent thing for me through all of this change. And, but as the months went by and the lack of balance of overall diversity in my day, it really started to weigh on me. And what I started to notice is I really started to care a little bit less about the things that brought me happiness. I was no longer focused on my health or my personal growth or nurturing my relationships. All of that took a back seat, and I wasn't taking care of myself in the ways that I used to. You know, as I talk about this stuff, being out of that mindset, you know, from where I am right now, it's easy to recognize that there was a lot of change that happened in my life very quickly. But when you're kind of stuck in that mindset, you don't have that perspective, if you will. So what started to happen, the one area of consistency for me through this, my job, started to lose its fulfillment. And I'll also say that I absolutely love what I do. Very passionate about what I do, and it does bring me a lot of fulfillment. I get a lot of fulfillment from my job. But by choosing to pour all of my energy into work and never refilling my cup in the other areas of my life to create balance, I was approaching depletion. And the imbalance in my personal life took away that spark in my professional life. And that's where my burnout really fully surfaced, and I was completely consumed. As I reflect, I think it might have been a subconscious behavior that I was doing to distract myself from everything happening in my personal and you know, family life. And that just led to a full burnout in the one area that was my stability, which was my job. So my burnout kind of took the form of, I was a full-on recluse. Like, I totally became a recluse. I wasn't making any effort to maintain my relationships. I neglected the people who previously helped push me to be the best version of myself. And I completely stopped all physical activity or anything that was sparking my passion. I started to really lose focus on everything, and just all motivation was gone. I was irritable, impatient, I was negative, and that's not typical for me. So the best way I can describe it, and whenever I describe my burnout, I say this, is that it turned me into a version of myself that I didn't recognize and I didn't enjoy. So as I sit here and I reflect, obviously it's a lot to think about. It's hard to feel those same emotions and that same energy that I was in from, you know, a year ago, but I definitely think that, you know, where I'm at now, because I don't know, I think where I can be confident is that I'm in a completely different space mentally and physically today. And I think that's the one thing I want to end my story with, that by going through that and turning into that version of myself, going through that experience and understanding how it impacts me, it gives me those tools, right, that we talked about earlier. It gives me those tools to really identify when this is starting to creep in and what I need to do for myself when I start feeling those imbalances or feeling those emotions. And by doing that and by having that experience, I'm almost thankful in a way, because I think every experience in life teaches you something. So I'm thankful that I've been able to understand myself a bit more through that process and by going through that experience, and you know, take away from that and use it as I continue to grow and, you know, potentially come across a similar situation like this in the future. I know that I've gone through it once, I've overcome it, and I know how to recognize the signs in myself earlier on to help prevent it from getting to the point that I was at a year ago. So that's my burnout story, probably my most intense burnout story. And the last thing I'll say is, it's not something to, burnout isn't just a 1 week. I mean, maybe it is depending on what level you're at, but it takes time to come out of it. And small adjustments every day can have bigger compounding impacts in the long run. So.
That's so true. And Becca, thanks for opening up. I mean, I know a lot of that is difficult to share. To be vulnerable is difficult. But I mean, it's such a powerful story. The one thing that just really kind of got me as I was listening in, and I hope you don't mind me just saying this, but
Go for it.
You know, you lost that spark
Yeah.
in your personal and professional life, and the thing that you were working so hard in your professional life, you know, you lost that enjoyment and that spark. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. You know, working so hard, I know a lot of people maybe that are tuning in or that'll listen to this, are working in tons of overtime and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that can just wear you down and you can lose that spark. The one thing that really touched me about what you shared too was that you got news from the family, um, and you had to make a decision. It was life altering, and you made a decision. And I think the thing that I was thinking about there too is, we've got our work life and we got our family life, and a lot of times we try to leave things at the door. We've heard that before, that leave it at the door. But the reality of that is, with life and work, I mean, it's hard to just leave that at the door. And but I admire you for what you shared, for the decisions that you've made. And then, one thing, as you were going through this burnout, it's not fun, it's challenging, it's painful. But on the other side of that is the strength that you've gained. What to do as you're starting to feel these things now. So again, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable, and really appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, I think just remembering that we're all human and everyone has a breaking point, and to give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yeah, so important. And I'll share my story. I'll be really, I mean, for me, it started at the 911 center. That's where my burnout that really kind of took place. And just to kind of go back, not real far, but I mean, to the beginning of my career, I thought this was kind of interesting. Was and I don't know if any of you others in public safety have heard this before, but I had people when I first came in say, give this career 5 years and you're going to be jaded and burn out. And to hear that as a brand new person, I was like, whoa, what? But really, I can honestly say 5 years came and went, and I wasn't burnt out. I found that I really enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed helping people. I started off, answering calls, dispatching. I got into the training program, started training people, moved up into leadership, and that I really enjoyed empowering, impacting people. Trying to help them be the best, see potential in themselves and stuff like that. Really enjoyed that. And as I continue to move up, there was a time where I definitely was giving a lot of myself, and not really taking great care of myself, as I was leading and as I was working and stuff. So what I wanted to kind of share with you was a kind of a moment that I started to recognize some signs of burnout, that I was giving too much and depleting myself, burning the candle at both ends. But that moment came when I was leading a shift, and it was the busiest shift at the center. The workload was always pretty intense, and I, we were short-staffed, and this is pre-pandemic, so this is before the pandemic. I know so many centers and agencies are experiencing staffing issues, and this was before then. And we were short. Our shift always was the one that would try to cover with overtime and stuff like that. And I remember, we had this thing called mandatory overtime, and since I had been there, we hadn't had to use it at all. And I remember we were getting to that place where, I was covering shifts, beyond my normal shifts. The other supervisors were covering shifts, and, our director and everybody was covering just to try to avoid mandatory overtime. And it got to this place where, we had to do it. And I had a tough decision to make. I've got to cover the shift, and I did, and I had to make that decision to do it with mandatory overtime. But I had given, I missed so many things with my family. I had given as much time as I could, and I finally had to be to that point where it's like, I can't do that anymore. I've got to do the mandatory overtime. And I know that was impacting other people, and I hated to do that, but we did. The other thing, I think, where I realized that I was noticing that I was going down that road of burnout was, I was on an off day, and there was a situation at work. I got a phone call while I was off, and I'm out playing with my kids, and we're on the swing. They got the swing set, and we're playing, and my kids were younger at the time, and they wanted me to push them on the swing and just play with them, and so I was doing that until I got this phone call. And then that call it just kept me away from them for an extended period of time. But I was out there walking back and forth, talking to the people at work and working through the situation. But I remember my kids coming up to me and saying, "Dad, will you push me on the swing?" And I just said, "I can't right now. Go back over there and play." And I snapped at them. And my wife, she came out, and we're all out there as a family, and I'm on the phone, for this extended period of time, and I looked at her and I said, "Can you take care of these kids?" And that's not me. That's not me. And I snapped at her. I snapped at my kids, and they didn't deserve that, And I look back at that and recognize that was signs of burnout. My sleep wasn't great, but I kept pushing myself, thinking, okay, I'm an optimistic person, thinking this is going to all end at some point. It'll be good. I'm going to keep pushing myself. I just want to just warn you of that. Those of you guys that are really just pushing beyond yourself, you've got to take care of you, because if you don't, that's going to lead to a lot of other things that we'll talk about a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But for me, my story, again, I was giving and giving and giving much more than what I should have. And it affected me personally. It took me down a dark road, and took me to depths that I've never been. And it, like Becca said, it getting out of that didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of hard work. I overcame a lot of things. But make sure you're taking care of you. Don't let that battery run down. Don't deplete it completely. Because you got people that are counting on you. I mean, one, you deserve to be happy personally, but you got other people that are counting on you too, your friends, your family, coworkers. And so, again, burnout is a tough thing. It's a road that, I think, many of us travel and experience. I think it's a matter of recognizing where we're at and making sure we're getting the help that we need. Again, it's okay to ask for help.
Every time you talk, Brian, I'm always just like, I admire you a lot. And I think to hear you reflect, it always makes me reflect even more. I think that what you just shared is the definition of you can't pour from an empty cup, because you were depleting yourself, and then you had nothing to give to those that did, that relied on you. So I just thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I always want to thank you every time you're vulnerable. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that too. I appreciate you being vulnerable as well. One thing is we start to come to a close here, burnout can lead to different things. It's imperative that if you're heading down this direction, or if you're already there, that you seek help. Utilize the resources that are available to you. Here in a little bit, we're going to talk about breaking through the burnout. And, there was a great question I saw pop up. I need to look at the questions again, but, talking about what do you do if your manager or your supervisors that you've talked to kind of are blowing you off, like how you're feeling and things like that. So, we'll talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to say, as you're going down this road, as you're kind of realizing and recognizing where you're at in burnout, untreated or if you are just starting to feel like, yeah, I'm giving a lot of myself. I am being kind of short with people, my coworkers and family, but that's about it. But if you don't start recognizing and taking care of where you're at right now, you can lead to deeper and darker things, and burnout can lead to depression. It can lead to anxiety. It could autoimmune disorders, chronic health issues. Just getting a little more, I guess sharing a little more information. For me, I again was pushing myself and again into a dark place, and it was hard. I dealt with depression. I dealt with high blood pressure. I dealt with these other things, and the reason I think we share this, Becca and I, but I share some other things about some of the things that I overcame. But the reason we do that is again to hopefully help somebody out there that's listening, that you may realize or recognize you're in a place where you do need help. And again, some of these things that burnout can lead to unchecked as you travel it down, travel down the road, you can lead to depression, anxiety, autoimmune disorders, chronic health issues, and a complete mental collapse. So again, imperative that you seek help. But the good thing is, like, with burnout, we're hearing a lot about burnout right now. We're hearing a lot about mental health and wellness, and I think in our personal lives, we're hearing a lot about the importance of health and wellness and mental health and wellness, but also in the workplace. And I think that I know we're all maybe from definitely different companies, organizations, agencies, and things may be done differently. But the one thing I will say is, as we're working to break through that burnout, it's important to know the resources that are available out there to you, and sometimes and a lot of those are in and through the workplace. The employee assistance programs, for instance, just such a valuable resource that you can utilize. I would say to that too, again, it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. You're not going to be looked down upon for asking for EAP, the employee assistance program, help from them. So make sure you're looking to see what resources are available to you in the workplace. One thing I will say about our company that I've been really proud of is just their push on wellness and making sure that they're providing resources, employee assistance program, but also webinars and other things to help you cope and deal with things. So check and see what your employer has out there. And a couple other things here, and Becca, feel free to jump in whenever you'd like, but one of the things I think it's important is to find trusted people, a trusted community of people, and that could be friends, mentors, family, trusted family or friends. Let them know where you're at, how you're doing. Confide in them, and sometimes just getting that, their perspective or their encouragement or whatever it is, that can be very, very helpful. So, I encourage you to share what you're going through with trusted. It's got to be trusted family, friends,
Mhm.
mentors. And then this goes to speaking with your manager. That's one thing we had here, and I know we got that question in there, and I haven't looked at the other questions, but the one that I saw was about your manager. What do you do if you share this? You speak with your manager about your feelings, and then maybe your workload or whatever you're having to cope and deal with, and how you're feeling, and they're just blowing that off. Um, that's tough, and I mean, I feel for you having to go through that. One thing I would say is, do the job assessment, and is this, a place that you want to be if they're not going to be supportive. And I know, understand too, that we may not have that option to look other places or go somewhere else, but um just I would even, go to human resources or something like that, and just seek out, and they may be able to provide you with some additional information and some others you can talk with. But like I said,
Mhm.
that, I saw that on there, and I know I had this thing here: speak with manager about your feelings and try to work out acceptable
Mhm.
work-life boundaries. I think it is important, and I think that they, when you do talk to them, I hope in most cases, hopefully they'll understand and work with you. And I realize too, in some cases,
Mhm.
you may have a manager like this person said that is just blowing you off your feelings. So
Yeah, I was going to touch on that too. I saw it come through and I didn't want to answer because I kind of wanted to process a little bit. I I agree. I think you know yourself better than anyone, and you kind of have to ask yourself those questions of, is this the environment that's healthy for me in a long term? Is this going to be a temporary feeling that I'm going through and my boss is just kind of, needing me to get through this period, or is this a consistent situation that I'm under? And I'm a big believer in, we can only control what we can control. And I'm only in control of myself and how I react to situations and how I handle situations. I have no control over how Brian is going to handle it or how your boss might handle it. And also speaking that I don't know the full situation, but if times are hard and leaving is not an option, try practicing small items here, like even on this list of self-care that can maybe alleviate and provide you a little more balance to take away some of that major burnout feeling. Baby steps, right? Maybe it's just going on an extra walk or signing off early one of the days. And even, I mean, also, I'm a big believer in being an advocate for yourself, and no one else is going to do it for you. So you got to do it for yourself. And if, like the bullet point number 2 here, setting those acceptable work-life boundaries is what you need to do, and say, look, you're not going to get the best out of me if I'm not able to do XYZ, right? I need to be able to rejuvenate and have some balance in my personal life for me to show up in the best way possible and produce the best work here when I'm on the clock. So it's definitely, I guess the answer is just reflecting and knowing your limits, knowing what is good for you. And before we move on, I know, Brian, we're getting close, but I do want to touch on 2 of these bullets here: the check your battery and the know what ignites your passion. For me, those are the biggest things that I always have to, if I'm feeling myself go off a path that I'm not comfortable, or I'm starting to lose myself, what I've learned over the past couple of years is taking a step back and reflecting. I try to be mindful in those situations where I'm feeling a little off. And the one advice for that, what ignites your passion bullet here, when you're in a situation and you're feeling burnt out, or you're feeling those negative feelings and depleted, take a look at where you are. Who are you around? What are you doing? What environment are you in? And understand that when you're in that feeling. And then on the other end of the spectrum, when you're really feeling at the peak of your happiness, and you're feeling like your passion is being sparked and ignited, who are you around? What are you doing? Write that, like, remember that, because that's what you need to do more of when you're starting to feel that burnout feeling, right? So it really is just going back to knowing yourself and what's going to help you give a little balance in your life, filling up the other areas of your life, so that it's balanced across the board.
Yeah, so good. You know, I want to go to the disconnect real quick, and I know we have a couple more slides here, but the disconnect is so important too. I mean, and I know it's extremely hard to do. I was just having this conversation with somebody last week about, especially, in public safety and in emergency, like communication center and stuff. I mean, just feeling like you're on 24/7. But for me, as I was working through my burnout, one thing that I did do is I went on vacation, and this was like the first time ever in my career where I completely disconnected. I would always have a phone. Anybody could always get a hold of me, whenever I went anywhere, no matter if I was on vacation or not. And I was always available. And one thing I did was, I decided I'm going to completely disconnect. So I took off my watch. I didn't want to know what time it was. I put my phone in the lockbox. I didn't even take it, where we were at on vacation. I left it in the lockbox. And I cannot tell you that freeing feeling, like, to know that, what, it is okay if I disconnect. I'm allowed to disconnect. And you had things in order, that if people needed to had an emergency or whatever, that they could contact the appropriate people they needed to, but I was able to disconnect. Another thing I would say is find something that like Becca said, what ignites your passion. I mean, and then find something, let that be different than maybe what the job that you do. I mean, I to just completely get my mind off. If I want to crochet or something like that, not that I don't do that, but I mean, I enjoy reading and other things. Find something that's totally different, totally opposite of what you normally do. And so that is one thing. I'd say disconnect. I did. I want to say.
I think you touched on it. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that a question came in, and it was really similar to what you were just talking about managing a dispatch center 24/7. It's a 24/7 job. How do you disconnect and set those boundaries when you have staff that work overnights, and you don't want them to think you're ignoring them because you're home resting?
Yeah.
Like, how do you wrap your mind around that as being responsible for that staff?
And that kind of, I mean, that hits me, because I mean, I had to do that. Like, I would call or text, to check and see how everybody was doing on third shift, like 2:00 in the morning, and just saying, hey, I'm here, and are you okay? But you got to think of yourself too. You're allowed to rest. You don't have to be on 24/7. You've got to take care of you. And I think sometimes that's so hard in our industry, is we care for people. That's our job, is to get people help, to make sure they have what they need, and to know that it's okay for you to take care of you. That's so important. And I think that's a lot of the challenge for us. But I think that's where a lot of us can get burnt out, is we always want to get people the help they need. We want to take care of them, but yet we neglect ourselves. And I really think it is very important that we make sure we take time for us. And for that question, making sure your people know that you're available and there for them. Let them know that you're available and there, but that you And maybe it is sometimes where you go in and see them. Sometimes you set up your schedule to be able to do that, but make sure you get adequate rest as well. So hopefully that helps answer that question. The other thing I want to say is pause. It is okay to step back. It's okay to take that breath, to just step back away from it all for a minute, and then go back into it. Be refreshed. There's power in the pause, and we'll just leave that at there. Leave that there. So I'm trying to advance the slide. There we go.
Okay. So the importance of work-life balance. I know we've talked about this over the last couple of slides, but for most of us, work is a huge part of our lives. We spend so much of our week at work, and it can be easy to develop that imbalance with work in our personal lives. So from all that we've discussed today, I think the main thing that I want to drive home is to know yourself, know the signs of your burnout, and know your outlets. If you're at work and you start recognizing that you're losing a little motivation, or you're having a hard time focusing, that could be an indication that you might need to fill up one of your other cups, right? Take a walk during the day, sign off early, take a day off to disconnect, like we talked about. Small steps, that is going to help you, because how on an airplane you put your oxygen mask on before you help others. Think of it like that. You have to practice self-care in order to show up at work as the best version of yourself. And if you're running yourself ragged and not providing balance in your life, it'll naturally play into the quality of your work, your fulfillment with work, and the energy that you bring to work. So how you care for yourself in all areas of life is how you will show up at work. Yeah.
Good. And I'll just add there, nurturing your mind, your mental health, your physical health, and your social life is just as important as nurturing your professional career. So it's important to find that balance.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we have a fun little video here we're going to play, and then we'll give you our contact info. So enjoy this one.
Listen up, guys. Our biggest problem right now, we are missing poses.
You mean passes?
No, poses. The secret to winning is to pause.
Bring it up!
Time out! Let's take a break.
In through the bunny hole.
Down the main street. You like it, Tom?
Now you're talking. Gorgeous work, Antonio.
I'm taking a step back.
What's the reason?
Sometimes you gotta stop to be an actual human.
Take a minute to celebrate, huh?
More than 20.
Soar, Turner! Soar!
Come on, boys!
Hey, you'll get it tomorrow.
We really like that one because I think it adds light to, this has been a somewhat heavy webinar, and we like to end on a kind of lighthearted note by still showing you that it's okay. Pause is power, taking a step back, getting after it tomorrow, and going easy on yourself is okay. So the last thing here, we wanted to share our information if anyone would like to connect. I'll say that Brian and I are not experts or doctors, obviously, but we are real people and we have real experiences. And the one thing that to know about me and Brian is we really do believe in the power of community and communication. So we'd love to hear from you, whether it's burnout related or not. I actually just read one of the comments in the questionnaire, and it hits home, because sometimes hearing from those experts and kind of being told what you should be doing isn't always the most comforting thing. But hearing, I mean, Brian and I are we're just real people, and if our story resonated with y'all in any way and provided a little bit of outlet or validation, I think is the word that they used, it was worth sharing today. So big thank you so much for joining us today. And it really means a lot to Brian and I to have you guys here. And we hope this presentation helped a little bit, understand more about burnout and what you can do to break through. So thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I just want to add to, the challenges, the struggles that you're in today, that you're facing. Look at it as it's giving you the strength for tomorrow. I know in the midst of the burnout, it's hard to see the light, like we were talking about earlier, but you'll get through this. You've got people that care about you and want to see you succeed. You'll get through this, and you'll be stronger than you were before you went in. So thanks again for tuning in, and the recording will be available to you in the coming days. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone.